episode. Today's episode really matters, and if you've been listening for a while now, this is my fourth year, my fourth season. You know that this podcast is as Framing New Heights, and today, for the first time, I'm saying this publicly that the show is evolving. I teach my clients to evolve, and so is the podcast. So, from this point forward, the podcast, and I will be renaming everything, branding, and all of that will be coming in a later time. However, today is the public announcement that from this point forward, it is going to be Michael Hicks the Liv2thrive podcast. And I want to explain that holistically is that I don't believe in changing names unless something internal has already changed. And Liv2thrive is not about coaching framework. It's not a mindset hack. It's not even motivation for that matter. It's what happens when life puts pressure on you and you enter collapse under it, or you rise above it. And when you rise above it, you take responsibility for who you're becoming next. And that's really what this whole podcast has been about. And so today, this podcast has been about real conversations. And before I bring on to our guests, I want to give you a few words from our sponsors. There's long conversations, sometimes uncomfortable ones, conversations that just don't rush to answers. And when I say all of that, and that's why today's guest fits this moment perfectly. And before I bring that guest on, I want to give you a few words from our sponsor. You can't sleep, you got the aches and pains, you got to check out this CBD oil. It is Amish tested, proven formula. If you can go to the website, superfungummies.com, you can only purchase the CBD oil. This CBD oil will take care of your aches and pains, will allow you to sleep better. And as we age, sleep is one of the most important attributes that we can fill our cup up so we can be the best version of ourselves. So if you want 50% off of that item, you can go to superfungummies.com. There are 3 different sizes there, and you can either then enter in the promo code New Heights. That's all cap locks, and you get 50% off of that product. It is a great product to use. I highly suggest it, especially if you are struggling to get that midnight, that night's sleep that we all need. And as we continue, so I want to bring on our guests today. Harry's story isn't really about aesthetics. It's not about being before and after photos. It's about what happens when loss, grief, addiction, and responsibility collide. And you decide to stop running. So let's get into it. Without further ado, please welcome the one and only Harry. Harry, before we talk about your transformation, who you were before 2020, and like if someone met you then, what version of you would they say they've experienced?
Well, I would have called myself a fat, negative, alcoholic slob, if I'm honest with you.
Wow. Okay.
That's what I was, yeah. I was living a very negative life. Was struggling with alcohol, junk food, binge eating, and was just in the ruts. So, yeah, I mean, I think, stemming back from childhood, it was, my parents got divorced when I was young. My sister encountered some problems. So there was always a bit of negativity in my upbringing and in my childhood. There was a lot of events that were going on, a lot of drama. And I had my own issues as well. And, I just started eating junk food at quite a young age when I went to secondary school. And then started putting on the weight throughout my secondary school. And started drinking eventually when I started full-time work when I was about 18. Then started drinking. And, I started off with just 1 or 2 beers on a Friday night when I had the flat to myself. I was living with my dad at the time. He had one night of the week where he went out, and I just thought, well, this is my time to have a few beers. That Friday then became Saturday. And then he got married, so he spent a lot more time with his wife. So I had the flat to myself quite regularly. And then that weekend turned into the weekdays. And before I knew it, every day after work, I was getting about 10 cans of Stella on the way home. And I was just drinking every single night. I was generally quite depressed with my life as well. So I always struggled with my mood. So the beer used to pick me up, put me in a good mood, and then the junk food was more of a comfort, so it was like the comfort that I needed was the junk food, and then the pick me up out of my bad mood was the alcohol. So I became addicted to both of them. Really, I had a real binge eating problem. I used to have all this junk food scattered over, my little setup. But I usually eat that after the beers to sober me up. So I'd usually get drunk first, and then afterwards would be all the junk food, takeaway curries, that sort of thing.
It's interesting because you basically turned your life around and now you help others with that same type of addiction. That's immediate. I can think of is instant self gratification, and so many of us, that could, I mean, you can insert addiction, porn, binge eating, binge drinking, not taking care of your body. I mean, you got the gamut. I came from a traumatic childhood as well. No father, mom remarried to my stepdad, physically abusive, verbally abusive. It was just ugly. And it's interesting how it's kind of like, I don't know if you ever read the book, The Tale of Two Cities, right? You have same individuals they have the same story, right? And one goes off in the wrong direction. And the other one, same situation, has a couple mentors, a couple coaches, a couple things that changed their life. What for you, Harry? First of all, tell everybody, because you've got this wonderful accent, tell everybody where you are chiming in from.
London, UK.
I love
Freezing
it.
over here at the moment.
Is it freezing? No, it's not as cold in Wisconsin. It's what is it? You guys do Celsius because Americans are so backwards. What's the temperature there?
I think it's below zero.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it's probably
Wow.
-1, -2, I'd say.
Okay. Yeah, we just hit that too. It's
Yeah.
like in the 30s now. But I want to go back and chat with you about this. There had to have been what time frame was this in your life that you were experiencing? I'm going to call it in my coaching practice the self gratification, the indulgence, the not living the full potential life. What age were you during this time frame? And then the secondary question to that is, what was the response that allowed you then to say, like, okay, that aha moment of like, man, I gotta get my stuff together. Go ahead and share that with us.
Well, first of all, you're right about the self gratification, and like you were saying about porn, gambling. It can be binge watching Netflix, shopping. These are all dopamine hits that we're getting in the brain. Dopamine's the feel good chemical that gets released at the expectation of the thing we're looking forward to, either the behavior or the substance. So it's all the same, really. Addiction's all the same. And whatever it is we're turning to, we're turning to these dopamine hits because, like you say, it is self gratification. It's that momentary, we're trying to self soothe our emotional pain in the moment to make ourselves feel better. So, turning to these things is actually a solution to our emotional pain because as soon as we have this substance, we're actually solving our problem. We don't feel bad anymore. So we turn to these things, and the brain gets used to it because it looks for something. Hey, Harry's not in a good mood today. He's feeling very depressed and stressed. What worked for him last time? 8 cans of Stella and a curry. So it wants to do that again, right? And because I survived the next day of life, my instinctive brain thinks, well, it worked yesterday. It kept him alive. It kept him safe. So let's do that again. So then it becomes a bad habit, and we just start turning to it over and over and over again, which is why people stay in ruts for years. And you talk about the age, how long this lasted for me. It was literally from the age of a teenager when, as soon as I hit puberty, I suddenly started to struggle, and I then started turning to the junk food. Then it became the alcohol a bit later on. But I didn't solve this problem until I was 32. I'm 38 now, so
Wow.
it's only in the last 6 years I've done so much studying on self improvement. I've studied nutrition, so I'm sort of a bit late to the party. Um, but it got to the point where I was in victim mode. I was in victim mentality,
Mhm.
and I kept on blaming. Oh, it was my mum and dad's fault for getting divorced. Oh, it was my school's fault because it wasn't good enough. Oh, it was this, it was that. My sister's done that, and now I'm feeling bad again. and it's easy for us to think like that. It's so easy because it takes the blame away from ourselves, doesn't it? And I only learned to get out of this victim mindset. It was actually, like you say about mentors, how one of us can go this way and one of us can go that way just because we've got a good mentor. My mentor was actually a book I read, and I like
Tell everybody the book. Tell everybody the book.
It was The Fear Bubble by Ant Middleton. He's an ex-SBS special forces soldier in the UK, and he has his own television show, Who Dares Wins, SAS Who Dares Wins. But he was someone that he'd been in, when he came out of the SBS, he went to prison. He came out of prison with nothing to his name, and he'd gone on to get his own television show. Now he's famous, he's going for the Mayor of London. So it got to a point, before I picked up that book, I was in a real bad place. I was like 20 stone in weight, really obese. I had liver damage from the alcohol. I had high cholesterol from the obesity. I was having kind of these heart pains every time I had a hot shower. So I was in a bad place. And with that, I was really negative. And then at that point in my life, my dad, who I loved more than anyone in the world, we were so close. I lived with him when I was 11 years old, moved in with him when I was 11. So it was just me and him throughout. My mum was there and she was loving, and my sister was there. But I was with my dad and we were like really close. He was then diagnosed with, I think in America, you call it ALS.
Yeah.
In the UK, we called it motor neurone disease, MND. And it's a muscle deterioration, and he got given 2 years to live. Just 2 months prior to that, he actually got diagnosed with dementia, and he was told he had 8 years to live. So just 2 months later, from realizing my dad was going to, mentally decline, I was now told, instead of him having 8 years to live, he was now going to have 2 years to live with this motor neurone disease. And he did die 2 years to the date of his diagnosis. So when that happened, it really did trigger me to think. I mean, initially, to be honest, I started drinking more. Didn't know how to handle it. I was in fear of the future, in fear of losing my dad and what he'd have to go through. I had a massive breakdown in the bath one day when I was YouTubing a video of how my dad was going to die. And when I saw this video of a man who was currently at the end stages of ALS, I was just like, I didn't even know what ALS was before my dad was diagnosed. So I saw this for the first time, and I literally like cried out as if I'd just broken my leg. Like that was my sort of yell in crying. I climbed out the bath and just fell onto the floor. I couldn't believe that my dad, such a lovely guy, was going to have to go through this horrible death. So to start off with, I started drinking. I was then abusive to my step family, causing all sorts of problems. I suddenly realised what I was doing to my dad. I was making his life harder in his last stages of his life. And I just thought, what sort of a son am I? And I was completely drunk at midnight, went down to the train platform in my local village, stood on the platform. I wasn't intending to do anything stupid, but I was just completely drunk and completely heartbroken and had no idea how I was going to face losing my dad. And I was in such a state myself. And at that point, I mean, emergency transport response were called because a driver of a train saw that I was too close to the platform. And at that point, I scarpered and I got home and I thought, you know what, if I kill myself, how is that going to help my dad? And if I carry on the way I'm going, how's that going to help my dad? And both of those options were not going to help my dad. And I loved him, so I wanted to help him. And I had no control over ALS. The doctors there's no hope, there's no cure. So the doctors just send you away and say, look, just enjoy the rest of your life because it's not going to be long and we can't give you any medication or anything. So the only control I realised I could have is to be the best son I could be for my dad whilst I still could, and at a time when he was going to need me the most. And at that point, that's when I realised, well, I need to sort myself out then. Because if I don't sort myself out, I cannot be the best son I can be for him. I need to be the best person I can be for me first. And that was when I realised enough's enough. And that was at the age of 32. And then when we talk about Ant Middleton being a mentor, it's great. Self-help books are great and autobiographies are great from inspirational people. because it's like having a chat with the author. It's like having a one-to-one mentoring session with the author. So I was staggered into Sainsbury's when I was drunk, picked up a bottle of gin, and I staggered to the checkout. And in the corner of my eye, I just saw the word fear, and I thought it jumped out at me because I was in fear of losing my dad, and I was in fear of the future. And when I looked at the front cover, because at this time in my life, I was assuming that fear. I'm a man. I shouldn't be. I shouldn't get fearful. I should just face it courageously and be brave and bold. So when I saw the word fear, and then I saw whose face was on the cover of the book, one of an ex-SBS soldier, one of the toughest guys in the UK, next to the word fear, I suddenly thought, oh, okay, I was interested because it didn't make me feel like a victim. And at that time, like I said, I was in victim mindset all the time. So I picked up this book just out of curiosity. And I remember sitting out on the bench, it was chucking it down with rain, and I had a bottle of gin in one hand, and I had Ant Middleton's The Fear Bubble book in the other hand. And let's just say that one of them was going to transform my mindset. And that's what it did. It taught me how to overcome fear. It taught me how to get out of victim mindset. It's just picking the brains of one guy, really, and that's how beneficial it is to talk to someone like a mentor or someone who's got some more wisdom than you have, and be humble and be willing to accept and willing to invest and get involved, because sometimes someone can just say a few things and it completely transforms your mindset. Sorry, I'm
Wow.
rambling.
The story is beautiful, and excuse me. I've got so many things that I got off of what you said, but I want to narrow it down a little bit. Do you think, Harry, you knew you were headed somewhere bad, or were you kind of lying to yourself in this process? Can you kind of elaborate on that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I knew I was on a bad path, and I knew things would probably only get worse. If I carried on drinking, carried on gaining weight, my self conscious was getting worse and worse. The fatter I got, because I just didn't like the way I looked in the mirror, and not only that, I didn't like the way I was acting. But I was hiding away from the way I was acting, and I was creating excuses for that. So no, I'm not too bad. My ego was getting the better of me, so I didn't want to
Yeah.
admit that. And even when I looked at myself in the mirror, I'd be turning certain angles, thinking, "Oh, I don't look too bad from this angle. If I don't show my people my face this way, they might not think I'm so fat." So I was even lying to myself with that as well, really, to start with.
Do you have? I'd be curious if you could send those over. Um, Maybe some before pictures and where you are now. I'd be curious to kind of put those out for promotional material. So I would love that.
Yeah,
Um, so I'm thinking here is, as you know, you talked about this. It's wild how often people don't realize that they're at rock bottom until some type of responsibility shows up.
mm,
And you know, everybody, I think what I've realized when I've been interviewing and bringing all of these different coaches into their live, into my podcast here, is we all have kind of the same type of stories of lowest of low, right?
yeah,
And something got us out of that lowest of low. And
yeah,
what's so beautiful is now the opportunity that we can give back, because I always tell the individuals and clients that I work with is, my pain discovered my purpose, so you don't have to walk the pain.
yeah,
That's really critical. I want to pivot a little bit here, and I want to talk a little bit about, so your dad, you talked, this was big, your dad had ALS and dementia diagnosis, 2 years to live, right? Gosh, I remember the day, um, my mom had CPOD, where she was locked in this oxygen tank. She died at like 60, I think it was 64. I have to go back. It's been probably like almost 20 years now. But those are really heavy moments. And was that the moment for you, Harry, that, or let me rephrase that. What did that moment do to you internally when you heard that? Like, did you go pick up the gin? Like, where were you at internally on that process? Can you elaborate on that?
You mean when I first was made aware of my dad's situation?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for 3 months I got even worse. I just continuously drinking every single night. It started getting onto spirits as well, out of just self destruction. And like you say, it's a shame in one aspect that we have to wait for something like this sometimes to hit our rock bottom for it to trigger us. Um, and what I learned through that process, which I never learned to do before, was to flip one of the worst negatives into one of the best positives. And it was through lack of control, because I had no control over saving my dad. And throughout my life, if ever my family had a problem, I'd try and fix it. I was always the fixer. I'd
Fixer.
run. Yeah, my mum's car broke down, go and fix it. My sister was getting into trouble with some guy, go and fix it. But with this, I couldn't fix it. And I think that made me realise, well, in that case, if I can't fix this anymore, how am I going to deal with it? And that made me realise I need to make the most out of this situation in terms of how is it going to help my dad. And I suddenly realised that, what every parent wants for their child is for them to be happy, and every child wants their parents to be happy because we love them. So the only thing I could do for my dad is to bring a smile to his face by making myself happy. And so I think that when that happened, it took me about 3 months to get to that point, and it was on the train station when I suddenly had that realization, and that was the point where I then really started to, try and fix myself in terms of making my dad smile, which I did on many occasions. So,
You know what I think of, Harry, is everybody says happiness, but I think for you, I think it was healthy. You needed to be healthy first, brother,
true.
before you could be happy,
Mm,
before your dad could be happy, because you were not living a
mm,
healthy lifestyle. You were probably full of anger, right? Um, and when you were going through this process, Harry, did you feel like you were behind in life at that point? Did you feel that?
yeah. Yeah, massively. And you're dead right there, Michael, as well. Like, it was all about my health. And this is why now I'm a healthy lifestyle mentor, is because I realized how being healthy made me feel so much more confident. I couldn't even take the bins out to my flat's car park in case someone saw me and thought, "Who's that fat idiot over there?" That was how I was feeling. But now I've got my own podcast. I'm helping other people. I'm on social media all the time. Like
Shout out your podcast really quick, brother. Shout it out real quick.
it's the SI5 Improvement Podcast. SI5 Improvement, which I'm going to be welcoming you on next week.
I'm excited. I'm excited to be
With
part of
your
that,
face.
my brother.
But,
Hey, so you talk a lot about how purpose has weight, and when purpose outweighs comfort, behavior changes, right? Um, so you didn't just, how can I say this, Harry? You didn't just quit drinking. You didn't just, at a snap of a hat. Everybody wants this instantaneous stuff in life, which eh, that's a whole new different. We could probably jump on and have an entire podcast. So everybody wants that instant dopamine hit, that instant. I want to, lose weight. But going back to what I originally was, what my process was here is you didn't just quit drinking. You didn't just lose weight. You rebuilt in my programming what I call identity. And what version of you, if you could tell my audience here, is what version of you had to die in order to develop that new identity?
well, it's a good illustration I use. For a caterpillar to become a butterfly, it has to completely transform itself. It can't be both. It can't be a caterpillar on a leaf crawling around and be this magical flying creature that everybody admires and takes a photo of. So
Yeah.
there's a process that has to take place. Um, And like you say about purpose, purpose is absolutely massive. And I think it's probably because I had no purpose in life. Why I just never thought, oh, just, yeah, I know I need to lose weight and I know I need to get to the gym. I know I need to stop drinking. But if there's nothing driving you, you're not going to have anything to get in your car for. If I told you to go and get in your car now, you'd say, well, okay, but where am I going? So if I told you, well, you're going to go to a 5-star hotel at the beach, next summer, you'll be like, oh, now I want to get in my car. So if you can create yourself a vision, which is what I'm trying to help people to see, is create this purpose and their vision. And that comes with an identity, like you said, because it really was about, when you talk about, it wasn't necessarily about my happiness. I would always hope that happiness would come as a result of me being healthy and having this new identity and this vision. It was really about my health, but really it wasn't about the alcohol or the junk food. It was about who I was as a person. I was argumentative, I was negative, I was lazy, I was in victim mode, and the alcohol and the junk food were just the sort of the product of who I was.
Yep.
So because was this person, it's no wonder that the alcohol aligned with me and the junk food aligned with me, because I was this negative idiot,
Yeah.
unhealthy.
I got, it's interesting. It's so a lot of my, and I don't know how much you know of my framing and framework. A lot of what I teach my clients is it's from a biblical transformational identity purpose.
Mm,
And what's interesting on what you said, and I was listening to um sermon today, and it was online, and I didn't go in, but um it talked about how are you living your life? Are you living in accordance of who God wants you to be? Right. So, are you aimlessly scrolling? Are you aimlessly angry at other people? Are you cussing at other people? Are you going on social media and just vomiting at the mouth about some political agenda or whatever it may be? Right. And it's interesting. I bring this all together to ask you this: when alcohol was removed from your life, Harry, what scared you the most when it was gone?
I don't. I think once I had made that vow to myself that I was going to change who I was as a person, and this is where it's quite a magical shift in how you approach temptations and addictions. Is, I think once you get that utter promise to yourself and this utter, we all say, "Oh, I'm going to start again Monday," or "I'll start again in the new year," but this wasn't a New Year's resolution, and it wasn't oh, I need to sort myself out, let's start trying to get to the gym. This was a proper realization that I needed to become a better person. And I think with that 100% commitment to a new identity, and it takes humility, you have to be humble with yourself, you have to be
Yep.
honest. You can't let your ego get in the way of this. You'll bury your head in the sand about who you really are. When I was totally honest and I really absolutely committed to change myself, this wasn't a New Year's resolution or a dry January. This was a life transformation. When that took place in my mind and my heart and my soul, the alcohol just went. I didn't get any more temptations. I didn't get any more pulls. I didn't get any more desires to drink. The junk food just went. I didn't have any more desire. It wasn't even a temptation. I could have a whole kitchen full of junk food. I could have a whole fridge full of beer. It wouldn't have meant the slightest bit of difference. I could go and sit in a pub.
Yeah.
It wouldn't matter. There wasn't enough room in my brain for temptations to come in and knock me off guard. I was so focused on being this new person for me, and then as a result for my dad. That gave me that purpose. Initially my dad was the purpose, but I was the purpose. Because if I did it for someone else, it wouldn't have worked. It had to be for me first. We say we can't pour from an empty cup. People try and put other people first all the time, and they burn themselves out. So with that, it really gave me purpose, and the purpose was me. And then my dad was the sort of second purpose.
Mm,
And it's funny because you talk about purpose. We were furloughed in 2020 from work because of the lockdown of COVID. I was furloughed for about 7 months. Now, it was through that 7 months where I was changing my identity, but we were all locked in our homes.
Yep.
So nobody saw me. So when I eventually went back to work and we were allowed back out into the world, all of a sudden everybody was shocked and they thought, bloody heck, have you seen Harry? And someone else would say, that's nothing. You want to see the way he's now acting. Because this whole
Oh, wow.
personality transformation took place, as well as that one book turned into 25 books throughout the lockdown. I went from studying self-improvement to nutrition to addiction, and before I knew it, I was going back to work. I was positive, I was bright, I was fresh, I was slim, and with that came another purpose. And sometimes this purpose, then we don't realize these doors start appearing once we get ourselves on this path, because everybody started coming up to me saying, how did I do it? How have you transformed yourself? How have you gone from that to this? And oh, my son's struggling with weight loss. Can you help him with that?
Yeah.
My husband's depressed. Can you help him with that? And so then it started creating me this purpose, which I wasn't even looking for, and that was to help others. And I think who has the famous quote? I think it might be Robin Sharma, Canadian author of the 5 a.m. Club. I think it was his quote that says, "The last stage of healing is helping others with what you've been through." So then I found
Yeah.
purpose in that.
And that's beautiful. I get the word alignment, like identity alignment. And I want to go and say this a little bit though. Not everyone can do what Harry did. And I want to be very clear. It's very hard to pick up a book and read it. You get knowledge when you read a book. However, if you don't apply the knowledge, there's no change, Harry. There's no
Yeah,
change. So it's
yeah,
obvious that you applied that process. And a lot of people, they go to these summits, New Year's resolutions, and we know this by the third year, the third week in January, those New Year's resolutions, people continue lying to themselves over and over and over. And it perpetuates this vicious cycle of, okay, you won't lie to your kids, but you lie to yourself on what you want to change. And
mm,
that's where you come in, right? You then create that vision plan, that roadmap, that identity piece that we talked about. Um, I think, Harry, I think people underestimate how terrifying freedom actually is. And once excuses like are totally gone, it's just you. And that's what I kind of got from what you had talked about. I want to transition a little bit into the grief, the addiction, and the purpose piece here. Is you now work with people who are grieving and addicted, right? Why that group specifically? Can you share that to my audience?
yeah, sure. I mean, first of all, you're right with what you said there about if you read a book or taking some knowledge, it's only potential power. It's the knowledge with the action that will give you that power. So yeah, you're dead right. And this is where you say about mentors as well. And I picked up books before thinking, oh, this would be a good read, and I thought, well, that was a load of rubbish. So as much as I love reading, there's some books that you just don't connect with, but you do have to apply it to your situation. You've got to be quite smart with your reading. You've got to think,
Mm.
okay, he's talking about this situation now. How can I apply that to my life? So you're right there. And what was your question again?
Yeah, no, no, no. That was well said, and I appreciate you saying that. So, you now work as a coach with people who are
Oh
grieving
yeah, yeah,
and addicted, right?
yeah.
So, why that group specifically? Can you kind of give that? I know you kind of shared your story, but why that group? Why that niche? Talk to everybody about that.
I guess it's because that's exactly where my transformation happened at the end of the day. I transformed my health. I lost 7 stone in weight. I overcome alcohol addiction whilst I was losing my dad. And I think grief is a kind of emotion. It's like stress, depression,
Mhm.
low mood, anxiety. It's a negative emotion that we're facing. And usually with a negative emotion, our brains, like we said at the start of the podcast, they want us to go to something quick to get us out of that mood that we're in. And grief is similar because whether you're coming home from work stressed out or whether you're dealing with a loss of a loved one, they're obviously different emotions, but both of those emotions are going to make you want to self-soothe your pain.
Yep.
So if you're struggling with a loss of a loved one, you could find yourself having a glass of wine to cope with it. You might be going to the care home every day, and you you're having to face this real emotional battle. So I think where I'm trying to help people is if they are struggling with a loss of a loved one or they have lost a loved one, is that there's a way of, like I said, there's flipping the worst of a negative into the best of a positive. And there was one explanation I gave where I went to see my dad in a care home. It was a week before he died. Didn't know that at the time, but he was very weak. He was choking on his puree foods. He
Mm,
was starting to slur his words and he couldn't really speak properly. And I remember leaving the care home, and as I drove home, I just cried my eyes out.
yeah,
And I was totally heartbroken. I thought, I can't believe I'm having to see him like this. Like, he does not deserve this at all. Completely crushed in spirit. And because this was now nearing 2 years of him deteriorating and of me studying self improvement and self help books and everything else, so now I was kind of, I had the knowledge and I knew how to apply it. And I just thought the only control I've got here is to go home, and I picked up my dumbbells and just smashed a strength training workout. And in my mind, it was because my dad's muscles were getting weaker, I
mm,
wanted his son's muscles to be getting stronger.
mm,
And it was my only fight back against ALS. I thought, if you're going to take my dad's muscles, you're not taking me as well. You know, you're not going to ruin my son's life as well as my dad's life. You know,
yeah,
how would my dad feel if he thought, well, MND's killing me, and yet he's watching his son heartbroken, crying, you know, struggling, turning to alcohol, turning to junk food. Well, MND or ALS is now killing his son as well as himself.
for
And
sure.
I didn't want my dad feeling that guilt. And even if you, I don't know if you're religious or not, to whoever's listening, but if you do believe there's a God up there, or you believe that this your loved ones are watching over you, it's the same if they're dead. They, if they're watching over you, they don't want to be watching over you feeling miserable, heartbroken, turning to all these substances to cope with their lot with the loss, because they're going to feel guilty. They're going to feel, oh, this is all my fault for dying.
Yeah,
Right? If they are up there. If you don't believe that, you don't believe that. But even if you don't believe that, well, what would your loved ones want for you? How would they want you living your life right now if they were watching you? You know? And I think it's actually selfish to suffer in that heartbreak. I know I'm not telling people not to grieve, but I feel like there's a way of taking that grieving, taking that heartbreak, and flipping it into the biggest strength that you can possibly make it.
yes, yes. It's so interesting. We provide value, yet we're still human. I'll just share this really quick. Is December or 2025 has been, in lack of a better word, and I'm not a negative person, but it was just a season. Let's just put it that way. But this past December, a lot of grief, and I still had to teach my clients. I still had to work with my clients. I still had to produce content. I still had to go on my podcast, and some of the things that I dealt with, Harry. And I'm curious just to kind of pick your brain, you being the grief expert, is I had a 14-year-old boy hang himself that I knew. I had my best friend got locked up. I went to visit him and had to pick up the phone and see him in an orange suit. Crazy, right? And then the super flu thing bug that's been going around. Um, we caught it over the holidays. My daughter's still struggling with it. And then on top of that, to ice off the end of December, one of my good friends, his son, decides to, well, he kills himself with a shotgun. Um, so you talk about grieving, right? So, we don't, as coaches, share enough with, like, okay, we're like supposed to be the experts and give all of this information to everybody else, yet, and then be our best selves from that. But I can truly remember this moment here. It was this past week, where you give so much, right? And then yet you still have to process the grieving stages, right? It got to a point where I couldn't do anything. Like, we got snow outside. I was like, I don't even want to get off the couch because I was so emotionally drained. And I don't know what advice, not even maybe for me, but just for other people in general. like now, the funeral is happening on Tuesday. My good friend, I'm just checking in with him, making sure that he's eating and how he's doing. We've been attempting to connect, but our schedule haven't aligned. But it's like, what would you say? You know what I mean? Like coaches still need coaches through this process of when we are going through stuff, even though we're supposed to be the expert in these fields. You want to elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, I had a one-to-one meeting with my business strategist the other day, but he's actually a life coach as well. And the business one-to-one actually turned into a life coaching one-to-one. And I still read books every day to continue to improve and to even in the last 3 months I've learnt so much. And this is why it's good for us to chat. I'll pick your brains, you pick my brains. It's just the way it goes, isn't it?
Yeah.
We've all got things to give. But what I would say on that is, when I first found out my dad was diagnosed with ALS, as I said, for the first 3 months, I was just binging. I was going even worse on the alcohol. I was drinking even more. I was eating even more. I was being even more negative, even more aggressive. So this grieving stage, I think sometimes it's gonna take its natural course sometimes, and I'm not trying to tell everybody that, as soon as your mum dies, that's it. You should just start improving yourself. There's going to be. It took me 3 months before I even came to terms with that heartbreak. So I think our brains need to come to terms with the loss, and I think there is a time to grieve, and I think there is a time to do nothing and just be upset and heartbroken. I think it's normal. It's a natural thing that the brain goes through and the heart goes through. And there's a time for that. So I like to give the illustration of there's a with a farmer. He ploughs his fields all year round, but there's a time where he has to leave the soil to lay fallow. There's a term called lay fallow where he has to just leave it alone, and I think that's when the soil absorbs all the nutrients or whatever it does in order to get prepared for ploughing. And that's necessary. It's the most important part of harvesting a field is the laying the soil just to leave it. And I think we're the same. I think sometimes we just have to let ourselves be. Our nervous system is obviously dealing with a lot and it wants to hibernate. And I think there's a time for that. And then there's also a time to start thinking, I can't go on like this forever. Let's start trying to take some action into getting over this and dealing with it. We can't just leave things undealt with. We have to deal with it. We have to face it eventually.
Yep.
So there's a time. There is a time just to let yourself be, come to terms. Then there's a time to start thinking about how you're going to deal with it, and that's when you might start asking some advice, or you might start, whatever it might be, reading a book about loss or whatever. And then there's a time for action. And I think that's where, not many people, I don't think, would have the mindset of flipping that negative into a positive.
Yeah, it takes work. That takes emotionally editing your processes. And a lot of people do not know how to do that. And
No.
I know for me, what I need is like, I don't know if you're familiar with Batman and Robin, but I like sometimes I just got to go to my bat cave. Like I need to just go to my bat cave. Just let
Yep.
me like, my girlfriend is like, what's going on? I'm like, I'm good. I just need to go to my bat cave. And once I go to my bat cave, that next day I'm fired. I'm ready to go. I want to.
Have you read a book, Michael, called what was it? It's on my bookshelf somewhere. Men are from Mars, women are from.
Oh, of course. Yes.
You've
Yes.
read
It's a
that
great
one.
book. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that talks about the male's way of dealing with things is to go to its cave. Just
Yes.
reminded
Well,
me of that.
that's where I got it from. Good. Good. I'm glad. Like, see, we're aligned, brother. I love it. I love it. Hey, 6 years sober, brother. Massive transformation. What keeps you grounded now? Right. um I just want to, with that question in mind, I have clients that because my whole programming, Live to Thrive, is about mindset, body, and then purpose, which is discovering your spiritual walk with our creator. But it's like I've had individuals that work with me just for the body portion of my programming, and they lost extensive amount of weight, right? And they make this change in their life, right? And then they're like, "Oh, I can do it on my own." And you know what happens? when we do it on our own. We go back to old habits, right? They tend to come back and seep back into our life.
Yeah.
And then it starts back over. It's that vicious cycle. So what keeps you grounded now as a grief coach, as an addiction coach? Talk a little bit about that.
Well, you're right. I mean, and like I said, I didn't start improving myself until I was 32. So for all that time in my life, I've been digging this path, and that path has turned into a ditch because I dug, trod that way so long that it's become this deep 6 foot ditch. Now I've managed to get out of that ditch, and
Yeah.
I've started to walk on another path. But that takes time to develop a path, doesn't it? If you look walking across fresh grass for the first time, it takes some time. Many people have to walk over the same route for it to start even just making its path, let alone making another ditch. And so what I sometimes find is there is this ditch that I've created, like you're saying about going back to bad habits. That ditch is always there,
Yeah.
and the path is always next to the ditch. So it's
Yep.
very easy to go whoop, and fall back into it again. So it does take some conscious effort, and that is now a real focus for me on healthy living, which is why I link healthy living to grief and addiction. I feel like I'm such a better person when I'm doing the right things in terms of my health, in terms of my physical health. I believe that when we're physically healthy, we're getting enough sleep, which regulates our emotions. We're eating the right nutrition, which connects with our gut microbiome to the brain. Getting daylight, which when it hits the nerve behind the eye, the retina, it sends serotonin to the brain, releases serotonin, which is what antidepressants do, prompts that serotonin, which is the good mood hormone. When you get all these things aligned as part of a physically healthy life, I found with me, my mental well-being just went through the roof. Like I was this positive, happy, confident person. I wasn't depressed anymore. I wasn't nervous. I was just, it transformed me. So, but like I said to you just now, I had a one-to-one with my business coach. It turns into a life coaching call. So even now, I still wobble. I'm still an imperfect human being.
Of course.
I've still got the same tendencies. I've still got the same imperfections. I've still
Yep.
got the same upbringing. That hasn't changed. It's just that I now know the tools to deal with them. And sometimes I can neglect these tools and I fall back into a bit of a rut temporarily. But I know now I can get myself out of it. So we're going to fall many times. I think the Bible says that, doesn't it? It says the righteous
Oh,
will fall 7 times, which means many times, and yet he will pick himself back up again.
it's like there's I think it was I don't know if you're a sports guy, but I used to coach at the professional level. And I remember this particular cartoon or particular commercial about Dwayne Wade: fall down 7 times, get back up eight
Mm,
times.
yeah.
Yeah. I don't, do you remember that? Do you remember that? I don't
Oh
know, but,
yeah, yeah. I've heard that. Yeah.
hey, so I want to talk a little bit about this and I want to give you my synopsis on it. And then I want to hear yours as well. So, I often hear people say, like, "Oh, I'm just having a bad day." I always say this: I don't think we have bad days. We have bad days when we don't have the tools and the mindset tools to change those bad moments
That's good.
into different perspective days.
Mm.
Does Harry have bad days?
Yeah, but that's an interesting point, Michael, because I never thought of it that way before.
Hmm.
And I do have bad days, and when they're bad days, sometimes I don't have the tools on that day to get out of it. If I'm honest, I know what to do long term. I know what to do to get myself back up eventually. But if I'm having a bad day, yeah, I don't turn to things anymore like junk food or alcohol. I can still do, but it's not like a long term, lifestyle anymore. But one thing I would do is if I am having a bad day, I just say that my medication is exercise in the moment.
Movement.
Yeah, and the reason I say that is because exercise releases dopamine. We spoke earlier about dopamine, about we link dopamine to junk food, drugs, sex, alcohol, cigarettes, vapes, whatever it might be. But actually, cold water therapy and exercise both release dopamine naturally, and it
Yes.
actually lasts for a long time. So it's not a dopamine spike and then a drop. It's actually a rise and then it stays risen for about 4 hours. So I know if I I mean, if I wake up in the morning and I'm feeling negative, I'll jump in a cold plunge, and I'll get out of that cold plunge, and I don't want to do it. It's
Who
really,
does? Who does?
you don't want to do it, mate. But afterwards, I just feel so much more positive and so much
Yeah,
refreshed and energetic, and I'm like, I feel great now. And it's the same with a run. I might come home from work or whatever it might be, or something might happen in my family, and I would just think I need to go for a run. And you know what? There's been times where I've been at my most depressed, and I do suffer from a mild depression. That I think it's always my mood is always sort of like there. So healthy living always takes me up to here.
for
But
sure.
if I leave myself be, I'm always here. But I've had antidepressants before, but I deal with it now with healthy living. But there was one time when I was at my most depressed. I was sitting here and I was just thinking, I'm in a real like bad mental place right now. And I ended up, I need to go for a run. I know I need to go for a run. So I went out for a run. I ended up running half a marathon. This was at 12 o'clock midnight in the pitch black
Wow.
through the woods, and I fell over twice. But I just knew I needed it. And when I came back, I was just like, and this is what I'm saying about flipping a negative into a positive. We can do that with our mood, like, channel that. So if you're feeling depressed, instead of going for the junk food and the alcohol to fix it, if you have to do anything, do something productive.
Mm.
People might say, well, it's a bit extreme for me to have done that, but I needed it in that moment. It was either one or the other. I needed to go out for that run. So that's my antidepressant, is going out or exercise in general. It doesn't have to
Exercise.
be a run, but yeah,
Um, I love that answer, and I appreciate that because it just shows the vulnerability too. And that's another piece that I do is allow men to understand that it's okay to be vulnerable. You talked a lot about ego, and ego tends to be a double-edged sword for men. It can be good in some aspects,
yeah,
but it can also be very, very bad in other aspects. But let's flip the switch a little bit. I'll have a little fun with you. So I call this part rapid fire. Only one word. Okay. Only one word responses. So this is kind of going to be fun, fast, and memorable. So here we go. So with one word response only, there's no explanations. Maybe I might ask for an explanation, but let's just say no for right now.
this
Just
is
pure,
scary.
yep, just pure instinct from Harry. Are you ready, Harry?
Go for it.
All right. Hold on here. So it's interesting because I'm looking at my show notes right here. I took my framework and I took your framework and I put words. I'm not going to tell you whose is whose, but I'm sure you'll know. But here we go. One word response. Here we go. Identity,
Vision,
ownership.
ego,
Ooh, good. That's a good one. Discomfort,
growth,
consistency,
discipline,
purpose,
drive,
faith,
hope.
legacy.
Doesn't matter.
Oh, I love it. Sobriety,
Freedom,
grief,
purpose,
nutrition,
well-being,
mindset,
suffering,
lifestyle,
like vision,
mentorship,
improvement,
last one, healing.
life.
I love it. So I think you know. So the first, I'm looking at them right now. So the first one, two, three, four, five, six, seven words were my framework. Your coaching framework, one, two, three, four, five, six, seven were yours. Did you know that or no? Or
No, I
did
didn't
you?
know.
Yeah, okay, okay,
Interesting.
okay. All right. So elevator speech. I like to kind of end with this, and then I'm going to ask you if you got any freebies or anything that you're offering right now for your coaching platform. Um, so We can do this 2 different ways. Well, let's do it 2 different ways because it's kind of fun that way. Excuse me. So you're on an elevator. So you're on the elevator. Either we're going to do first is going to be your role model. Okay. Second is going to be your ideal client. All right. But this is an elevator speech. So you got 30 to 45 seconds. So I know, Harry, I'm putting you on the spot on this, but
What do you mean? What do you mean?
so yeah. So have you ever heard of the elevator speech?
No.
Oh, okay. So when you get on an elevator, you got 45 seconds to a minute to give your pitch. Right.
Okay.
All right. So you got 45 minutes to a minute, or 45 seconds, I should say, to a minute to give your speech. All right. So one is going to be your role model, the biggest role model that you have ever had in your life. All right. And the other one is going to be the other one is going to be your ideal client, what you would say to them and how you would say them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. Which one you want to do first?
So you want me to describe my biggest mentor?
Yep. And your biggest mentor is in that elevator with you, and it's just you two, and you get 1 minute or 45 seconds to chat with them.
Oh, I see. So I can talk to this person.
Yep. And what would you say?
As if I'm speaking to him in the lift.
Correct.
Well, that's an easy one.
All right. So we're going to do role model first. Ready, set, go.
It's got to be my dad. So, you all right, Dad? Just to say that your humility, your kindness, your friendliness, and your patience had a massive impact on me as a son. And if it wasn't for you and your guidance and your patience with me, I wouldn't be sitting here now having a podcast with Michael and inspiring other people to make changes in their life. And just wanted to thank you for that.
That's beautiful, brother. That's absolutely beautiful. All right. Your ideal client is on that elevator now. What are you saying to them?
I know life is a struggle, and I know what you're going through right now is a struggle, and I know you're not feeling great. But if you can prioritize your health for yourself so that you can be a better person, then everybody else around you will reap the benefits of you being that better person. And if you can channel that heartbreak in a positive way to take positive action and use that as energy, as fuel to improve yourself, to stay in control of your health, then you will naturally improve your relationships with the people that are around you. And it will also help you to cope far more better with what you're going through. If you add insult to injury, nothing's going to get better for you. A negative, when you approach it with more negativity, is only going to be more negativity. If you can approach a negative with a positive, you've got half a chance. So put yourself first. You will deal with it in your own time, but make sure you're in control of yourself and your health, and you'll end up being all right.
It's well said, Harry. So before we close today, Harry, I just want to say this. Your story, and I love these kind of stories because it's proof that responsibility doesn't ruin your life. It just actually gives you direction and purpose and understanding. And I appreciate you coming on today's podcast and really honing in and talking about that. I want you to share right now your socials, how people can get a hold of you. If you have any offers right now, this is your moment. Go ahead, brother.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it. Yeah, if you are someone that's struggling and you're in a real rut right now, you can head over to my social media, SI5 Improvement, or Harry Edward Bassant on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. I've got a free download, which is a 1-week health reset challenge. And it is a challenge. There's a set of tasks to apply every single day that's going to take you out of a rut and help you to get in control within a week. It won't transform your life in that week, but it will give you a lifestyle structure to stick to, which I stuck to for many months to transform myself. So that is there to download. It's called Power Start 7. And I'll keep it simple there. I have programs and I have one-to-one mentoring, but I think that's a good place to start. So Harry Edward Bassant over on Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok. And that downloads yours for free, Power Start 7.
Well, you heard it all here on Michael Hicks, the Live to Thrive podcast. New branding coming to you soon. And the podcast, it constantly keeps evolving because conversations need to go much deeper. And as always, my name is Michael Hicks, the host with the most 1% better in mind, body, and soul. And always, come on, get them up, Harry, and stay flexed. Yes, buddy. Yes, I
I
love it.
think I need to work on mine, mate.
That's not good. We're always a work in progress.
I've just
Hey,
taught
I
myself
will.
some stuff.
I'll message you. But we'll end it right now. I'll message you on Instagram.
Sweet.
All right, brother. Be good.
Thanks a lot, Michael. Appreciate it, man. Thank you,
You're
everyone.
welcome. Bye bye.
Cheers.